Hey, Brandon Burns here. Every day means every day. And I got a quick question for you. Are you an introvert? Are you somebody who experiences a little bit of social anxiety, maybe? Do you avoid large crowds and public speaking? If you do, I want you to know that I was you to the 11th degree. I didn't even order off of a menu by myself at a restaurant until I was 17 years old because I had such crippling social anxiety. I hated talking to strangers, even one on one, much less, God forbid, a group setting or public speaking. There was absolutely no chance you would catch me dead doing anything like that. Even up until my early 20s, when I was a fifth year senior at the University of Michigan, I would get panic attacks on the first day of class because I would have to stand up there in front of a room of maybe 20 other students and introduce myself and say, "Hi, I'm Brandon and I'm studying economics and psychology." Even just that brief introduction horrified me. I would be sweating, shaking, my voice would be shaky. I almost couldn't even do it. That's where I was. And now, just a few short years later, I've been on stages in front of thousands of people. I've been on live national television every single year since 2021. And you might ask the question, Brandon, why in the world would you be doing that kind of thing? Why are you so public and outspoken if that's a big fear of yours and if you're naturally an introvert? And I want to answer that question. But before I do, I actually want to just encourage you for a second, because if you look at the correlation between at least economic success and personality style, it turns out introverts do way better. Why? Because they're strategizers, they're thinkers, they're reflective and introspective. They don't just randomly, recklessly take action, although that sometimes is important and something that we have to learn how to do. But we strategize. And oftentimes it's the strategy that gets the result more so than the volume or the work. And so I just want to start this video off by saying, if you're an introvert, if you're somebody who struggles with social anxiety, I want you to know that if you can learn to leverage that and use it effectively, that is an advantage, not a disadvantage. You can literally use that to propel you to wherever it is that you want to go in life. As a matter of fact, I still use my natural introverted personality style even when I speak to this day. If you notice, I'm pretty linear compared to a lot of other motivational speakers. And the reason for that is I have some boundaries in mind. I want to build my argument step by step, brick by brick. I don't want to just randomly, any which way, try and be passionate and motivational and dynamic. I've learned how to do that in certain circumstances, but most of the time when I speak, it's a lot more linear than what you might be accustomed to, at least in the speaking world. And the reason that I do that is because that's who I naturally am. I always could write better than I could speak. And what do you do when you write? You build sentence by sentence. You build towards a conclusion or a crescendo. And I've learned to adopt that style in speaking. So I'm telling you, no matter how bad your social anxiety or introversion might be, A, it's actually an advantage if you learn to use it. B, it absolutely can get better. C, there's nothing wrong with you. And D, it can actually become an advantage for you if you learn how to integrate it into whatever it is that you want to do. Now, really quick, I just want to give you the overview of how I actually got to where I am today in terms of social confidence and things of that nature. Number one, and I know you don't want to hear this, and this is the most generic advice ever, and everybody hates it: get uncomfortable. Get uncomfortable. Like massively uncomfortable. I don't mean a little bit uncomfortable. I mean get super uncomfortable, okay? Now, for me, I was actually forced into this. Again, I was super introverted even all throughout college, but what began my journey to getting better at all of this was ironically hazing. If you know my story, I was a gymnast at the University of Michigan, and as most freshman athletes experience, there's some kind of team rituals, team activities that you have to go through as a new member of the team. And to be completely fair, we never did anything crazy. It's not like the hazing stories that you hear on the news, but there were some things that required you to think on your feet, that required you to be very spontaneous and very let's just say it, brave and outgoing around strangers and new people, you know? And for me, that was something that actually gave me a little bit of experience where I could prove to myself that I didn't suck at that. See, here's the thing. Those of us who are naturally introverted, we don't put ourselves in certain environments. Because why would we? I'm not going to put myself in an environment where you're asked to speak on the fly, where you're asked to be spontaneous, where you don't know what's going to happen next. Sounds horrible to us. So what do? We avoid those environments. You know, you go to the improv comedy show and you sit all the way in the back of the room, right? You desperately avoid networking events. You just don't go certain places and put yourself in certain situations that you know are prone to that type of activity. Makes complete sense. The problem is, because you never get practice doing that sort of thing, this belief that you suck at it is just left untouched. It's kind of like the monster under the bed, right? If you actually look under the bed, you realize that there is no monster there. But because you never look, the monster in your mind keeps growing and growing and growing. So this limiting belief that you probably have, that you're not very articulate, that you're not confident, that you're not dynamic and energetic, those beliefs are just festering and growing simply because you've never given yourself an opportunity to prove those beliefs wrong. And so whether you get a little bit forced into it the way that I was, or whether you actually put yourself in that environment, I need you desperately to find a way to get uncomfortable and to do it consistently. So what I want you to do right now is write down whatever that thing is you've been avoiding, because I guarantee you over the last 2 or 3 minutes when I've been speaking about this, something bubbled up to the surface and you've been thinking, you know what, I've been avoiding this environment. I've been avoiding taking this next step that I know I need to do. I've been avoiding something. I want you to write down whatever that thing is. You know what it is, I promise you. Write it down right now. Then underneath that, what I want you to do is write down an action item. How can you take action on that? What's the tangible deliverable that you need to do and execute in order to get yourself in that environment and push yourself a little bit? And then thirdly, last but not least, what I want you to do is write down a timeline. All right, a goal without a action item and a timeline is just an idea, it's just a vision. I want an action and then I want a timeline. When are you going to do this by? All right, write down those 3 things for me really quick, because you've got to get uncomfortable. That's principle number 1. Principle number 2 is that it's bigger than you. It is bigger than you. Now, again, I'm not going to blame anybody for how they're naturally wired, because there's a lot of stuff that goes into it. There's genetics, there's biology, there's how you're raised, there's your environment. There's all sorts of things that go into whether or not you grow up as an introvert or an extrovert. And I'm not saying that everybody needs to be a true extrovert, but I am saying you need to at least develop yourself to the point where you can communicate confidently. Why? Because you have so many gifts inside of you. Like I said, you're way deeper than a lot of people who are loud, but they don't think things through. Like, you're probably way more of a strategizer, more of a philosopher, more of a deep thinker, but nobody knows about your ideas, even though they could be so impactful for so many people. And I'm not saying you need to be a motivational speaker. I'm saying in business, in leadership, in parenting, and even in your romantic relationships, in your friendships, in whatever it is that you want to do in life, you would be able to help more people and make a bigger impact and get more of the life that you actually want as a reward for it all if you were a confident communicator. So you have to understand that it's bigger than you. Let me tell you how I learned this. I was coaching at a gymnastics camp. Actually, this is before I was coaching. Let me correct myself there. I was a janitor at a gymnastics camp in Crossville, Tennessee, a place called Flip Fest. Loved it there. And I couldn't afford to go to camp. It was like $900 a week. And I grew up in a 900 square foot house in East Limestone County, Alabama. So I couldn't afford to go there, right? And so the deal was, I cleaned the toilets, I mopped the floors, I swept, I did all the things, did all the dishes. And that was how I earned my keep. They let me stay for free. Eventually, I did such a good job at it that they expanded the program and they put me in charge. So here I am, 17 years old, and I'm in charge of a group of maybe 5 or 6, 15 and 16-year-olds who are in a similar situation to myself. And they're all cleaning to earn their keep at the camp. Now, we had this tradition at camp called cabin checks, and cabin checks was where the coaches, who were like top of the food chain at the camp, they would go into all the camper cabins at the end of every night of camp, the end of every day of camp, and they would go in there and they would just pour into them. It would just be life advice, motivation. They just talk to them, connect with them on a level that was not just sport-specific coaching. And I remembered how impactful that sort of thing was for me. I mean, it changed my entire life, hearing some of that information on motivation and personal development. I'd never experienced that before until I had been on the receiving end of that. And I said, I don't want these kids I'm in charge of to miss out because they were still cleaning while those cabin checks were going on. And I didn't want them to miss that experience. So I said, you know what? Let me figure out a way to do this. Now, I'm still super anxious, super introverted. I couldn't speak at all. I never wanted to be a speaker. I didn't even know that was a thing people did. But I went onto YouTube and I searched motivational speech. And I found a guy named Eric Thomas, which if you know the rest of my story, you know is pretty ironic. And I took one of his speeches and I basically just memorized it. And I gave the most Walmart brand version of a motivational speech that you've ever heard to this group of kids one night. It was terrible. I didn't know how to storytell. I didn't know how to do any of that. Lo and behold, the next morning, the kid walks up to me who had heard that, hands me a crumpled up piece of paper, doesn't say anything, walks away. Open up the piece of paper. It says, I've been thinking about committing suicide for the last 6 months. What you said last night really helped. That young man is going to medical school next year. The reason I tell you that is because that moment for me changed things. It made me realize that it ain't all about me. That, yeah, I know I'm kind of uncomfortable. I know this is scary to me. I know I don't feel ready. I don't feel prepared. I don't feel like I should be in this position of leadership and being outspoken and vocal. I hate all of this. But imagine if I had waited. And by the way, listen to the language. I am not ready. I feel anxious. Me. You're not thinking about who else is going to be helped through you. So I need you to understand that it's bigger than you. Not only will you get the rewards and the benefits of becoming more confident, of getting uncomfortable, of pushing yourself in this regard, but so many other people are going to be impacted by you and your ideas that need them. But they can't get them right now because you haven't done the work to push yourself to get comfortable being uncomfortable. So it's bigger than you. That's number 2. Last thing, this one's really tactical and practical. Number 3, I want you to say one more thing. This is a tangible strategy that I began using a few years ago, and it helped me so much. You go to the grocery store, you say, the cashier says, hey, how's it going today? You say, great, thanks. Or maybe you say, great, how are you? And that's it. The principle here is say one more thing. Again, get practice in low stress environments that help prove to yourself that you can do this thing. And so I would just start saying, instead of great, how are you? I'd say, oh, great, I actually just came back from the gym. How are you? Right? Not a big change, not a big adjustment. I'm not putting my life story out there, but I'm saying one more thing, or I'm asking them another question. I'm just adding in a little bit more information. Why? It pushes you to become somebody who shares more, who articulates themselves more, and who doesn't hold back as much. Because introverts often have this underlying belief, like at the foundation of it all, that our opinion isn't worth sharing or that our thoughts don't matter as much, right? And that's what we got to break through. We got to just get practice in training our minds that, no, you got something to say. You might think it's silly, but who knows where this could lead? Who knows if this could add value to somebody? Say the thing. Say the weird thing. Anyway, that's principle number 3. Say one more thing in every interaction. I promise you it's going to help level up your communication skills like you wouldn't believe. Hey, I really hope that this helps somebody. I hope that you found value in this. If you did, don't forget these things that we're talking about, they're not just things you do occasionally. They're things you got to do daily because every day means every day. If you enjoyed this video, like, comment, subscribe, share it with somebody else who needs it. Until next time, don't forget, every day means every day. Peace.